I've got, how many videos have I made? How many brisket videos have I made? Hey friends, it is Mazie with Barbecue by Mazie. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. And if you're coming back, there's no other way to say it. I love ya. All right, today we are talking about how to trim a brisket. I've got a brisket video from start to finish showing the full trim through the whole cook, but I thought this time I'd break it up into two parts, a little more digestible, and part one's going to be trimming, part two is going to be smoking the brisket on the new Pit Boss Pro Series vertical smoker. She's a big old girl. Can't wait. So today I am getting the brisket all prepped and ready so I can throw it on the smoker early tomorrow morning. I just can't wait. All right, let's jump right in and start talking deets about the brisket. This is a brisket from Kroger, so it's just a choice brisket. It was on sale, and I love me a good piece of meat that's on sale. It was only about 30 bucks. It's a nice 10-pound brisket. The rule of thumb, my thumb, buy the best quality meat that you can afford. But sometimes you just have a hankering to cook a cheap brisket. That's where I'm at today. And honestly, I've had pretty good success with cheaper cuts of brisket. It's really hard for me to get like a prime brisket where I live. So this is just what's accessible to me. Just want to start off with that. You just kind of start with lower quality meats. You might get a lower quality end product, but I ain't complaining. I'm going to bring out the brisket. Let's go. Look, this is a brisket only a mama could love, but I didn't care. The price was right. All right, I am starting with a nice and cold brisket. It will trim a lot easier if it has not been sitting out and it's nice and cold out of the fridge. Also starting with a nice sharp boning knife. This is a Pit Boss knife that can be found at Lowe's. All right, so I'm starting with the meat side up because I like to get rid of the decal very first. The decal is this large chunk of meat here. There's just really no point for it. So we're going to trim that right on out. Don't want to cut my fingers off. Not today. Not today. All right, so you can see this decal right here goes all the way through here, and it is just a huge chunk of fat. Okay, decal is removed. Next thing I'm going to do is trim down these sides a little bit. So right here you've got some hard fat. It's not going to cook up well, so we are just going to take it off. So by removing that fat in the beginning of your trimming, you can kind of see over here on the fat side how much fat you're working with and how much to trim down. Flip it over to the other side. All right, this is a bunch of just yucky fat too, so I'm going to trim that off. You really want to trim off anything that is just going to cook up funky. If you want to use this stuff you're trimming off, you could use the fat for tallow, grind up that meat. All right, so you can see we still got some more fat right here. I'm just going to kind of poke my knife in there, get under it, trim it off. All right, that's a good start. So now what I'm going to do is start cleaning this up a little bit. You've got these stray meat pieces. You want this to be as aerodynamic as possible. I'm going to remove some of the silver skin and hard fat. Just slip under the fat and cut it off. If you kind of lift up the meat, it's a little bit easier to get under. This brisket has got very thin meat right here. That's not going to cook up. It's going to burn. So don't come at me for being wasteful, but we want this to cook nice and slice nice. So I'm going to come in right here where it starts to get thicker, and I'm going to cut it right there, and I'm going to round the edges. So just going to take this meat off. Okay. So you can see that we've got a nice thicker piece of meat here, and it will just cook up better. Okay. So you want to make sure when you're trimming a brisket that you have it all nice and cleaned up. You don't want any weird thin edges hanging off, or thicker pieces and super thin pieces, because it's just not going to cook evenly, and you're going to be left frustrated and irritated when your end product has these weird charred crispy pieces. I'm talking from experience. Now we are working on the fat part of the brisket. This brisket has quite a bit of fat, as you can see. Now, in the beginning, when I was cooking briskets, one of the problems I kept making was trimming off too much of this fat. So the fat adds like a nice little protective layer to the meat, you know what I mean? And so err on the side of removing too little fat rather than too much fat. So for the back, I am just going to trim off some of this hard fat, and really just pick your poison, start wherever you want. It gets really thick down in here, so I'm just going to take a little bit off like that, cut away from your body. You can see how much fat there is, so you got quite a bit to work with. All right, so just continue removing your fat. See right here, I accidentally dipped down just a teensy and I got into some meat there. Try to be careful of doing that. And it's a hot day and I can already tell this fat is getting harder to trim. Yeah, trim that edge at my earliest convenience. Okay, this is some really hard fat. It's not even good fat that's gonna render. You'll be able to tell by the different feel. Like this is softer fat, this is just really hard. Almost might be, I think it's actually, is that silver skin? No, it's just hard fat. So I want that off because it's just not even gonna render very well. It's like super thick. All right, so this is just a weird, bad, floppy piece of meat and it's going to burn. So I am going to just take it off and try and round this brisket up a little bit. It's got this big gouge here, which isn't ideal, but this is just going to help it cook a little more evenly and not just completely burn that edge to smithereens. All right, so you can see how that just cleaned that up a little bit. Remember, this was our decal side. We are done with the trim. So now we are going to season our brisket. All right, we've got our trimmed brisket here, and I'm using a little bit of that W sauce, you know what I mean? As a binder, you can do a little You don't have to use a binder. There's enough moisture in the meat for your rub to stick, but I just like using that good old-fashioned W sauce. And I like to start on the fat side. Just a little bit'll do ya. All right, so I made my own rub. It's a really complex recipe. The ingredients, you may have heard them before: salt and pepper. Let me show you what I used. Kosher salt, coarse ground black pepper, and I did a 2-to-1 ratio. The reason I do 2-to-1 is I just don't want to accidentally make the meat a little too salty, and I really like the way pepper tastes on my briskets. So on the fatty side, I go a little lighter than I do on the meat side. I swear, if you forget to season your edges, I will personally hunt you down and I'll season your edges. The reason I season in a tray is because you can mop up all the seasoning that fell off. Pat it in. Flipping it over to do the meat side. Little bit of W sauce, rub it in. Gonna go heavy on this side. Brisket is a big, thick piece of meat, and it can handle it. Oh, can it handle it? You didn't think I was gonna forget the edges, did you? You thought I was. But I wasn't. Look how good that looks already. Smells good. I love the smell of pepper. Okay, used all our rub. Our edges are seasoned. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I am prepping this brisket the day before so that tomorrow when I go to throw it on the smoker, it's all done. I don't have to wake up and look alive. I can just put it on the smoker and it's ready to go. So this will sit in the fridge overnight and that rub is gonna sit on there, get all delicious. Can't wait. I'm doing this brisket a little bit different. I'm finally going to cave and try the foil boat method. If you don't know what I'm talking about, stay tuned. I'll show you all about it. Usually I wrap in butcher paper, but I'm gonna try the foil. If you have made it this far in the video, please comment purple duck down in the comments below, just so I know who's hanging out with me till the bitter end. You people are some of my favorites and I appreciate you. It brightens my day every freaking time you guys start commenting that. All right, you guys, that was part 1. Make sure you stay tuned next time for part 2 when we cook this brisket on the Pit Boss Pro Series 6 vertical smoker. She's a big old girl. All right, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I just appreciate it more than you'd ever know. We'll see you back out here for smoking the brizzy tomorrow. Let's go. Work all around the clock. I know they watching. Got it out of the mud. Ain't had no options. Oh yeah. Let me go ahead and change my style up. Got that touch like Midas. Back then they wouldn't invite us. Switched up, now they wanna be like us. And now they dealing with identity crisis. I know, I ain't sorry, get a pity party. You could probably get it from your mama now. But if you pull up on me, you gon' see a body, cause I'm not the one.